Give us your thoughts, your latest thoughts, as we hear these Brexit conversations get underway, of how we solve this very difficult issue. The DUP, we understand, does not want any kind of border between Ireland and Northern Ireland, but at the same time they don't want any passport checks or other checks between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK. But some barrier, it seems, for immigration purposes might need to go somewhere. Where would that go?
We have to see how this works out. Basically, once Britain leaves the European Union, the European Union, for its part, will be obliged to charge EU tariffs on goods coming into the European Union, that is, crossing into Ireland from Northern Ireland. We in the Republic will be obliged to collect those tariffs. Likewise, if Britain, having left the European Union, wants to control immigration from the European Union into the UK, it will have to impose some form of immigration control at the border in Ireland and at ports in Britain to which traffic comes from Ireland. And these are inevitable consequences of the decision that Britain took, and it is a British decision, to leave the European Union. They flow from that decision.
They do flow from that decision. So there's the immigration issue. There's also the tariffs, as you've alluded to, John. To collect tariffs, do we need to have a physical border? Some on the Brexit side would point to some of the Swiss borders and say you don't need a physical border.
Well, you may not have a physical border at the border, but you will have to have checks and controls and delays somewhere on either side of the border. That's inevitable. Goods will have to go somewhere to be checked. And people hope, of course, that lasers and other things will be able to do some of the checking, but you will need to investigate actual containers to see whether they contain people who shouldn't be in containers, whether they contain goods upon which the appropriate tariff has been paid or not. And I cannot see how one can avoid substantial bureaucracy arising from this British decision to leave the European Union.
The Swiss, I mean, obviously the Swiss have it much easier because they have natural physical borders in a sense. And of course, they don't have the strained relations that Ireland and Northern Ireland have the history. Will it be difficult to maintain the peace while erecting some sort of border control between the two nations? Well,
Switzerland has 120 separate treaties with the European Union, and it is under those 120 treaties that the Swiss are able to soften their border, so to speak. You're right, there is no political tension in Switzerland or in the neighbouring EU countries that adds difficulty to the issue. As far as Northern Ireland is concerned, the fact is that the economic damage that will arise from the barriers of whatever kind there may be between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, the economic damage will fall on both communities in Northern Ireland. It won't be just the pro-UK unionists that will suffer or the pro-United Ireland nationalists. Both communities will suffer economically as a result of this extra bureaucracy that's going to be imposed upon them by the decision the UK took.
In that sense, I mean, because Dublin will be, the Republic of Ireland will be deeply affected economically by a hard Brexit. How much of an ally can Theresa May count on in Dublin?
Well, Ireland is a member of the European Union and intends to remain so. The benefit for Ireland of being in the European Union is that we're in a rule-based institution where we have a court that makes fair decisions between strong countries and weak countries on the basis of uniformly applied rules. That's the attraction for us of being in the European Union, and we're not going to leave because we had experience ourselves in previous centuries of being in a union with a much bigger country where there weren't commonly agreed rules, and we suffered from that. We will, of course, seek to mitigate the effect of Brexit. We will, in that sense, be looking for a soft Brexit. But I think there is no such thing as a good Brexit. Brexit is breaking up something that has existed together for 44 years, and the disruption involved in that change is inevitably going to be costly. But we will obviously try to explain British needs to our European colleagues, and we will try to explain to Britain some of the preoccupations that our European colleagues have.
And John, how fearful are you for the peace process? You were involved, of course, in the Good Friday Agreement. Do we need to revisit the parties involved if we see the Conservatives and the DUP sitting down and in some form forging an agreement?
I think it is unlikely that it will have any immediate effect. I think the DUP, when they make a deal with the Conservatives, will be making a deal about UK-wide matters. I don't think that they will be dealing with the issues of the internal governance of Northern Ireland, which is supposed to have power-sharing administration where both nationalist and unionist community leaders take part. That has been brought to a temporary end by decisions by Sinn Féin, the nationalist major party, to leave because they weren't satisfied with certain things. Now that the DUP is potentially in government, so to speak, in London, I think the incentives for Sinn Féin to get the arrangements in Belfast up and working again will be increased, so that these decisions are not going to be taken under the influence of the DUP operating through London. So I hope that Sinn Féin, who took the initiative to bring the institutions down, will now have greater incentives to put them back up again as a result of that arrangement.